Good morning. Welcome everyone to the draft 2022 Interregional Transportation Improvement Program second hearing for the Southern California region. We appreciate you being here, and I'll start with a brief opening remarks. Thank you for attending the second hearing on the draft 2022 Interregional Transportation Improvement Program. Government Code Section 14526 requires the California Transportation Commission to hold at least 2 hearings, one in Northern California and the other in Southern California. The purpose of these hearings is to reconcile any objections by any member of the public or any other stakeholder to the draft Interregional Transportation Improvement Program, otherwise known as ITIP. The ITIP is a very critical component of the State Transportation Improvement Program, or STIP, as it provides funding for 1, projects to improve state highways, 2, projects to improve the intercity passenger rail system, 3, projects to improve interregional movement of people, vehicles, and goods. Douglas Remedios will provide instructions for members of the public wishing to comment on the 2022 ITIP following the Caltrans presentation. Thank you again for your presence, and we look forward to a wonderful hearing today. Douglas?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the public, we welcome comments from the public as part of each item at this hearing. We encourage you to use the raise hand feature as early into the item as you possibly can to give this system time to acknowledge you. You should see the webinar control panel, likely located to the right-hand side of your screen. There you will find the audio and questions tabs. Under the audio tab, attendees will have the choice to listen via computer or telephone option. Should you prefer the computer option, please ensure the appropriate box is selected. If you choose the phone call option, select the corresponding box and dial the phone number, access code, and audio pin as directed by the automated system. Please note that if the audio pin is not entered, you will remain in listen-only mode and will be unable to speak. As a reminder, each registered attendee is provided a unique link and phone number to access the webinar. These should not be shared with other participants as they are registered to a specific attendee and can create confusion for staff when making comments. There are 2 options for participants to provide comments on agenda items. Click on the hand icon to indicate you wish to make a comment, and you will then be unmuted and called upon to make your comment at the appropriate time. Please be sure to state your name and any affiliation you may have prior to voicing your remarks. Alternately, you may use the questions tab. Type in the item you want to speak about, the number you are commenting on, and your comment. Staff will read the comment on your behalf. Please do your best to be concise with your comments. Also, please make sure that your comments add new information. If you agree with the comments of a previous speaker, simply make that statement. Since we often have many speakers, we ask that you make your point in 3 minutes or less. If for some reason we have many speakers on a topic, we may reserve the right to limit speakers further. A timer may be displayed on screen during your comments. You will not be able to be on camera while making comments. Thank you for joining us today. We know your time is valuable, and we appreciate you sharing some of it with us. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Douglas. I would like to introduce myself, Hillary Norton, as chairwoman of the CTC, and highlight that I have colleagues of mine that are here today as part of the meeting. While we do not do an official roll call, I would like to recognize them today. Commissioner Darnell Grisby, Commissioner Fran Inman, Commissioner Joe Liu, Commissioner Rocco Davis. Thank you very much for being here as part of the hearing, and I know others are going to be joining momentarily. Douglas, it's now time to proceed with the next part of our meeting.
Next slide, please, Brandy.
So I've done my opening remarks. Executive Director Mitch Weiss, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have any comments to kick it off. I will turn it over to Teresa Favila on our team, who will be making comments in the hearing.
Okay, before that, I do want to say that today's hearing, because it is in the South, we had a very robust meeting in the North. I want to thank everybody for your participation and for the great conversation. Teresa, you ran a wonderful meeting with the Caltrans staff. Today, I hope that we can also look at the fact that we have a newly signed infrastructure bill on the federal side, Congratulations, happy for everyone. And the fact that we have an opportunity in the South to discuss the crisis that is present among us, which is the crisis in the ports, and how we are going to use our transportation network to move freight differently, expeditiously, and more cleanly. So we see this as an opportunity in this discussion today to highlight some of those items. I'm so excited that we have our new infrastructure bill, and we as CTC and Caltrans and CalSTA all went to the federal government to ask for a variety of things that could be included in the infrastructure bill so that we could make our transportation system in California work even better. And so we will be in meetings like this and in our future meetings, including our December CTC meeting, going over what that infrastructure bill has that we can use as part of the state's vision for improving transportation throughout the state. Looking forward to talking to you on all of these issues today. Thank you so much, Teresa. Carry on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Madam Chair, commissioners, members of the public. Just really quickly, my presentation is going to be the same as in the prior hearing, just for those of you that are new, but also for those of you that are, I know have some stakeholders that also participated in the first workshop that are very interested in hearing the discussion that we carry on in this hearing. So bear with me. It's a lengthy spill here. Thank you. Good morning. The State Transportation Improvement Program, otherwise known as the STIP, is the 5-year program of capital investments that funds highway, transit, rail, local roads, and active transportation. Statute requires the STIP be adopted biannually by April 1st in even-numbered years. The STIP is comprised of 2 broad programs: the Regional Improvement Program that takes 75% of the STIP capacity, and the Interregional Improvement Program that takes 25% of the STIP capacity. This hearing is specific to the proposed Interregional Transportation Program, otherwise known as the ITIP, submitted by Caltrans that is funded from the Interregional Program. Statute requires that ITIP funds be distributed as follows. 60% of the interregional funds must be directed outside the urbanized areas on interregional road system, with a minimum of 15% for intercity rail projects. 40% of the interregional funds must go anywhere in the state, subject to the 60-40 split. That's the south and north split. By October 15th of each numbered year, and after consulting with the transportation planning agencies, county transportation commissioners, and transportation authorities, Caltrans is required to submit to the commission a draft 5-year interregional transportation improvement program, the ITIP. By November 15th of each numbered year, the commission is required to hold at least 2 hearings, one in the north and the other in the south. And as Short Norton indicated, the purpose of the hearings is to reconcile any objections by any members of the public or other stakeholders to the draft ITIP presented by Caltrans. The draft 22 ITIP was submitted to the commission on October 15th. The ITIP was also posted on the Caltrans website as well as the commission's website. This is the second hearing of the 2 hearings that are required. The North hearing was held last week on November 1st. After the hearings, Caltrans staff will prepare the final ITIP and shall consider the input received at both hearings. The final ITIP shall include a summary of the major comments received at the hearings and responses to those comments. The final ITIP is due to the Commission December 15th, as well as all the regional transportation improvement programs. Staff will reconcile all the proposals into one document that will be presented at the North and South STIP hearings on January 27th and February 3rd. Staff will publish its recommendations for the 22 STIP on February 28th. The Commission will adopt the STIP at the March 2022 Commission meeting. That's a few days before the required deadline of April 1st. The 22 STIP guidelines were adopted by the Commission at the August Commission meeting, where the priorities and expectations were set for the 22 STIP. The guidelines set the policy, standards, criteria, and procedures for the development, adoption, and management of the 22 STIP. Also, in August, the Commission adopted the 22 STIP fund estimate, identifying 796 million of new capacity for the 22 STIP period. The fund sources for the new capacity is the state highway account, as well as federal funds. The STIP does not have any funding from the public transportation account, which is the primary fund source for transit projects. The 22 STIP will carry forward 3 years from the 2020 STIP and add 2 new years to the STIP. What this means is that most of the new capacity identified in the fund estimate is mostly in the last 2 years of the STIP, which is 25, 26, 26, 27. And just for purposes of understanding the first 3 years, the first 3 years is 22, 23, 23, 24, 24, 25. Those are the carry forward from the 2020 STIP. Since we only have capacity for the last 2 years of the STIP, that means for any new projects proposed in the first 3 years of the STIP, other projects have to be delayed in order to allow room for these new projects. The formula distribution for the interregional program was approximately 213 million. The program had an advance of 39 million, making the amount available for new programming of 178 million. In order for the ITIP to go over the 178 million, other regions must have to go below, since the whole STIP is managed at the statewide level. The STIP guidelines identify the interregional program that works towards achieving the following objectives: provides access for people and goods to and through all regions of California, ensures that the interregional transportation system is reliable and efficient for the movement of people, goods, services, and emergency response, develop and operate a safe interregional transportation system for all travelers by improving public safety and security, optimizes multimodal connectivity throughout the interregional transportation system for all people, improve interregional connectivity to enhance California's diverse economy, and improves and manages California's interregional transportation system in an environmentally sensitive, economical, and equitable manner that fosters livable and healthy communities and promotes social equity. All new projects proposed for funding in the interregional program must meet the objectives as specified, I just specified, be consistent with the Interregional Transportation Strategic Plan, the ITSP, have a project initiation document, otherwise known as a PID or an equivalent to the PID, and have a complete funding commitment, meaning that every project proposed in the STIP must be fully funded by committed funds. Madam Chair, that concludes my remarks, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. If not, we can move over to Caltrans's presentation.
Thank you very much, Teresa. I want to also recognize that Commissioner Falcon has joined us. And so with that, I'd love for you to move to the Caltrans presentation, and then we will start our comments. Thank you very much. Welcome, James Anderson. Nice to see you again.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Norton and Commissioners. Can you hear me okay?
We sure can. Thank you so much.
Great. My name is James Anderson. I have the pleasure of presenting the draft 2022 Interregional Transportation Improvement Program, also referred to as the ITIP. But before I begin, I'd like to thank Teresa Favila for that excellent overview and purpose of the ITIP that she just provided. Slide 2, please. Consistency with the ITSP. The ITSP stands for the Interregional Transportation Strategic Plan, and that's also referred to as the ITSP. One of the goals of the ITIP is to ensure consistency and alignment across statewide transportation plans and policies, including the goals identified in the California Transportation Plan for 2050, the Climate Action Plan for Transportation Infrastructure, also referred to as CAPTI, CAPTI's vision and guiding principles, and the Interregional ITSP, Interregional Transportation Strategic Plan. The objectives in the ITSP are focused on interregional travel. The ITSP provides the overall framework to guide the investment of ITIP funds, including strategic improvements for the entire interregional system, regardless of the funding sources. The 2021 ITSP includes a greater emphasis on climate, equity, and accessibility than the 2015 ITSP. And that's what's changed over the last 5 or 6 years, is a real emphasis on climate, equity, and accessibility. As such, with this draft ITIP, projects that are consistent with CAPTI and the 2021 ITSP were added for your review and consideration. Next slide, please. Factors used to prioritize the ITIP projects for 2022. So with limited funding available for the ITIP cycle, projects were prioritized based on cost increases for currently programmed projects. Currently programmed ITIP projects that need funding to complete remaining phases, project costs, and our ITIP request amount. And again, that was based on the limited 2002 funding capacity, right? The scoring capacity or the scoring criteria for ITIP projects, and prioritizing new projects consistent with the vision set forth in ITSP and the CAPTI framework. Next slide, please. So funding capacity for the ITIP. So the 2022 STIP fund estimate provided $178.2 million in new capacity. COVID relief funds provided an additional $16.8 million in new capacity. Therefore, the total capacity for the 2022 ITIP is $195 million. Next slide, please. The $195 million in available capacity was used to fund carryover projects, which includes cost increases or changes to the existing projects and new projects. And I'll discuss a little bit more about these in the upcoming slides. Next slide, please. So 2022 ITIP highway and active transportation projects. This slide is very important and provides a statewide perspective of the overall interregional highway. And what I mean by that is I'm saying existing and newly proposed projects and their location in one of the 11 high priority corridors. The question was previously asked how active transportation projects contribute to interregional travel. Well, active transportation projects improve vulnerable road user safety and connectivity on key interregional routes, which helps keep local disadvantaged communities safe from the impacts of interregional travel on that corridor. The two active transportation projects proposed in this ITIP will encourage walking, bicycling, and transit on main streets that support disadvantaged communities. In addition, these projects will better separate vehicles traveling interregionally from local active transportation trips, provide safety benefits for all users of the state highway system. Next slide, please. The 2022 ITIP intercity rail projects. This slide is also critical and provides a statewide perspective of the overall intercity passenger rail program, and meaning existing and newly proposed projects and their location in one of the 9 intercity passenger rail corridors. The question was previously asked, how does this ITIP address growing freight demands? It's important to point out that rail investments identified in the ITIP would provide greater efficiencies in both passenger and goods movements by reducing delay, vehicle idling, and rail travel time reliability. Caltrans is currently developing a new statewide ridership modeling tool for the 2022 State Rail Plan. And it is our plan to use this new ridership modeling tool to analyze the rail projects proposed in this ITIP at the earliest opportunity available. The soonest we expect to do that is right before the 2022 State Rail Plan is finalized. These rail projects will also provide the necessary capacity and reliability for a mode shift of passenger vehicles and goods to rail. This mode shift is expected to improve travel trip reliability on the highway corridor. And please note that all corridors have projects. Please note that not all corridors have projects, and some corridors may have more than one project. Next slide, please. So this slide, we talk about the 2020 carryover projects to the 2022 ITIP. So as the table shows, there are 20 carryover projects from the 2020 ITIP. It's important to point out that these projects do not count against the available new programming capacity for this cycle, as their capacity is carried from the previous cycle, or cycles, I should say. Next slide, please. So carryover projects to the 2022 ITIP that have either cost increases or have funding needs for subsequent project phases. So as this table shows, there were 5 existing ITIP projects that received new funding this cycle. 2 projects had construction cost increases. 2 projects had their construction phase fully funded. Funding was provided for 1 project to fund PS&E and right-of-way support and capital, and funding for cost changes to carryover projects total about $89.9 million, just short of $90 million. Next slide, please. So as the table shows, there are 11 projects proposed for funding in the 2022 ITIP. 2 are active transportation projects, and for those of you that attended the meeting in the north, you will see there's been a column added to the far right of the table that basically speaks to the type of project that received funding. So 2 projects are active transportation project. We are proposing 1 highway project, 8 passenger rail projects. Funding for the proposed new ITIP projects total about $108.7 million, just short of $109 million. These projects, which reflect the priorities described in the 2021 ITSP, will help us implement CAPTI and work towards our climate, health, and equity goals by increasing safe transportation options for the traveling public. With the programming of these projects, over half of the 2022 ITIP investments will be for rail, transit, or active transportation infrastructure, which is huge. If anyone is interested in how the new projects were scored, using the ITIP scoring criteria, the total scores for the new projects will be posted on the same website as the draft ITIP document. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So thank you for allowing me to present the draft 2022 ITIP to you. I'm happy to answer any questions, or my team is here to help answer any questions. Please remember to submit written comments by mail or by email to the addresses shown below or on the slide below. With that concludes my presentation. Thank you, Chair Norton and the commissioners, for the opportunity to present to you this morning.
Thank you so much, Mr. Anderson. And I truly appreciate that you changed the framing of how you're presenting the information to add the column of the different types of uses. And it is important to reiterate that over 50% of these funds are going to active transportation, rail, and transit. Thank you very much for this new way of presenting this information. I think it's going to be very helpful for the public and helpful for people to understand that we are not just funding highway programs in this application. Thank you. Teresa, with that, do you want to begin the public hearing?
Yes, before you begin the public hearing, Madam Chair, if you don't mind, I'd like to make a couple of comments on the draft ITIP as it was reviewed by staff and the concerns that we have that hopefully will be addressed in the final ITIP when it is submitted by December 15th. Okay.
Yes,
So
please
the
do.
first one is every new project proposed in the ITIP must have performance and indicator measures as identified in the STIP guidelines. For all new projects that are in excess of 50 million, or when the right-of-way and construction phases is 15 million or more. So the final ITIP, we expect the final ITIP to include all the performance indicators. Also, the ITIP should have a discussion on the active transportation projects and how these meet the objective of the interregional program. As our executive director Weiss indicated at the last hearing, there is no discussion and we don't know the linkage as to how these meet those interregional goals. The next comment I have, every phase that is proposed for funding must have a full funding plan. The commission will not program a project in the STIP if it is not fully funded. There is a few projects in the ITIP that do not have committed funding, and so hopefully in the next 4 weeks you can work out as to if the committed funds and identify those funds. And finally, all projects that include non-STIP funds on a project must be programmed in the same fiscal year as the STIP funds are proposed. The commission will not cash flow a project, and the commission will not approve funding on a project that has already started construction or has been awarded. Those are my few comments that I want to make sure that are addressed when the final ITIP is submitted in December 15th. Thank you, Madam Chair. That concludes all my comments.
Thank you so much, Teresa. With that, would you like to begin the public hearing? I would first like to hear from the commissioners who are here, and then Teresa, will you move forward with the speakers from the public? Thank you. Commissioners, are there any of you who'd like to speak on the items you've heard about today and the discussion we were having about how the South ITIP and others can start looking at our port congestion issues? Commissioner Inman, what a wonderful segue.
Funniest thing, yeah. Thank you, Chair Norton, and thank you, James, for the presentation. I really just struggle with trying to get my arms around where we are today in terms of the goods movement crises and the volumes, and particular into, I think it's Appendix C, but I may have the wrong appendix there. But in this report talks about our projections for freight vehicle miles traveled and our projections for just freight trips in general. And I think we're living that right now. Our ports prior to COVID had reported that we had lost 19% of market share. I'm not sure, nobody's really gone through and looked at all of these freight volumes if we have gone back and picked up some of our market share. But regardless, we know that we have the nation's gateways here, and we're struggling. We're struggling along all nodes of the supply chain, and I'm not sure we ever run an angiogram on freight when we look at the interregional connectivity that this particular document represents. So I guess I'd like to just express my challenge and opportunity for all of us, and especially on our journey for greening our supply chain. I think we really have to roll our sleeves up and make sure that we get across our goal lines. So to do that, I see these new project lists, and I really don't see where all of the work on the freight, and you know, our state freight plan really didn't have a prioritization. And so I guess I'm still struggling with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Inman. And the issues you raised are very, very important to us as well. And we're going to be working with you, other stakeholders, to have the discussions to try to develop strategies to help address some of the concerns that you raised. So thank you for the comments. And we look forward to trying to address some of those comments, or at least attempting to address the comments in the final ITIP. Thank you.
Thank you.
Norton,
Yes, Commissioner Liu,
may I pile on?
please.
I would
By
just
all
like
means.
to agree with Commissioner Inman and her priorities, and I think I would encourage all of us who are involved in transportation planning in California to not be afraid to think big. I think there are a lot of short-term crisis issues we need to deal with right now because the supply chain is so dysfunctional, as Commissioner Inman was saying, at every node. I mean, this is a worldwide problem, and it's not going to be solved with a single solution. It's going to be solved by a lot of little solutions, one container at a time. But we also need to have, and this is a stark reminder of the long-term vision and the willingness to take some risks and to think out what this system needs to look like in 50 or 100 years and start taking those actions now. So I think we have to have the courage to say that there are some hard decisions that need to be made for this system to function in the long term. And that's what these planning documents can and should be about. And the fact that goods movement is an interregional undertaking as its nature is that this is one good forum in which to start exploring those ideas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very appreciated about short-term and long-term visions. With that, are there any more commissioners who wish to speak? If not, let's begin the public hearing. Executive Director Weiss, would you like to speak on this issue?
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in and mention one thing we're looking at. One of the things we're starting an analysis of is the Caltrans's delivery on the intercity rail projects. We're of course supportive of those projects, both for their impact to freight and also their potential to move people and take people out of their cars. But historically, Caltrans has struggled to deliver those projects, and looking back over, maybe 15 years or so, more than a third of the projects that got programmed ended up being deleted or had the funds lapsed because they weren't delivered. So we're looking forward to doing that analysis now to see if the trends are improving, and we'd be happy to work with Caltrans to have discussions about what we can do to help improve that delivery.
Thank you so much for your comments. Now, Teresa, you've been very kind and very patient, and Mr. Anderson, we are going to begin the public hearing.
Oh, yes, the staff recommends you begin the public hearing, Madam Chair.
Excellent. Teresa, do we have any people wishing to speak at today's public hearing?
Doug and Justin, I believe we had a few people that had expressed desire to speak. Can you please read out the names?
Yes, thank you, Teresa and Chair Norton. We do have attendees looking to make public comment at this time. Up first, we have Mike Woodman.
Thank you, Chair Norton and fellow commissioners. Appreciate the opportunities to address you today. Unfortunately, I was not able to make the North hearing, had a conflicting medical appointment, so appreciate the opportunity to attend the Southern hearing today. I'm Executive Director of the Nevada County Transportation Commission, and addressing you today to voice our support for Caltrans ITIP recommendation to program $3 million towards the right-of-way phase 2 of the State Route 49 Corridor Improvement Project, STIP 034E170. This project will improve multimodal safety, operations, connectivity, accessibility, goods movement, and evacuation readiness, and is the top regional priority of the Nevada County Transportation Commission. This investment will leverage a total of $11.1 million which includes $8.1 million of regional improvement funding previously programmed for the project development components, and an additional $3 million of regional improvement program funding to be programmed in NCTC's fiscal year 21-22 RTIP in partnership with the $3 million of Caltrans Interregional Improvement Program funding. In alignment with CAPTI, this project will not significantly increase VMT. The State Route 49 Corridor Improvement Project has been determined to be exempt for air quality conformity by EPA and the Air Quality Conformity Working Group, consisting of representatives from the Federal Highway Administration, EPA, FTA, Caltrans, NCTC, and the Northern Sierra Air Quality Management District. Therefore, the project has been determined not to be a capacity increasing project, and the project reduces both air quality pollutants for ozone precursors in Western Nevada County non-attainment area and greenhouse gas emissions. The State Route 49 Corridor Improvement Project will help to facilitate mode shift within the corridor by reducing transit delays and improving reliability and on-time performance for the Gold Country Connects Route 5, our interregional fixed route commuter service. And this corridor plays a key role in providing interregional multimodal connectivity, providing that express fixed route service between Nevada and Placer County, which provides connections to the Amtrak Capital Corridor intercity passenger rail, Auburn Transit, Placer County Transit at the Auburn-Conheim multimodal station. The project will also implement bicycle and pedestrian improvements identified in the Nevada County Active Transportation Plan and State Route 49 Comprehensive Multimodal Corridor Plan, including the addition of 10-foot shoulders along the State Route 49 corridor to improve pedestrian and bicycle safety, and will help to encourage additional mode shift within the corridor and provide enhanced mobility through eliminating the gaps in shoulder and provide safe and continuous network of facilities. Bicyclists and pedestrians are frequently observed navigating the project segment, and this project will provide safe accessibility for the residential areas adjacent to the project that are identified as AB 1550 low-income communities. The project segment has also been designated as a critical rural freight corridor by the Federal Highway Administration and serves as an emergency detour route when I-80 is closed between Immigrant Gap and Colfax due to accidents, wildfire, maintenance activities, or construction. The most recent I-80 emergency detours occurred on July 3rd and September 10th of this year. Data collected by Caltrans District 3 Management Center indicate between 2004 and 2011, there have been 218 closures of I-80 where truck traffic and passenger vehicles were detoured onto State Route 49 and State Route 20. Additionally, the project segment is located within a CAL FIRE very high fire hazard severity zone, and the construction of the planned improvements to State Route 49 will make this segment more resilient to the risk of wildfire by reducing roadside vegetation fuel loads and eliminate the existing design features that constrict traffic flow in the event of evacuation. During the recent evacuations for the August 2021 river fire, those previous concerns raised by local partner agencies and emergency responders were verified when the highway in its current configuration operationally broke down, resulting in accidents, panicked residents, and unfortunately a fatality. And this was with only 4,000 residents evacuated. This project truly improves the safety and operations on the State Route 49 and addresses the multimodal needs in this segment of the corridor, and is supported by Senator Brian Dahle, Assemblywoman Megan Dahle, CAL FIRE, Nevada Sierra Placer Unit, CHP Grass Valley, Nevada County Consolidated Fire District, Citizens for Highway 49 Safety, Fix49.org, Nevada County Accessible Transportation Coalition, Mobility Action Partners, and Nevada County OES and the California Trucking Association. On behalf of the State Route 49 Coalition of Stakeholders, we urge your support for Caltrans funding recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for a very, very thorough testimony about all the ways that this project is going to affect multiple modes and the metrics you're going to use to follow up on it. Very, very helpful. Teresa, as we're presenting the speakers today, could you also present a list, or Douglas, of the number of people who have written to us providing written comments on these items for this hearing today?
Yes, we do. You know what? I will do it at the end of the comments, so that way I have an opportunity to count all the letters we have received, as well as emails. We've received plenty of emails as well, and so I'll do that, Chair Norton.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Next, could we continue with the public comment, Justin? Do we have any more people who wish to speak?
Yes, Chair Norton, thank you. Up next, we have Mike Labar looking to make public comment. Mike, you are now muted and free to comment.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners, and thank you for this opportunity to speak in support of the King City Accelerated Access Platform and Multimodal Station Phase 1 project. I'm a firm believer that where transit goes, communities grow. This is a project that meets several local, state, and federal priorities, especially with the passage of the new infrastructure bill at the federal level. This is a project that will provide an alternative mode of transportation, enhance the city's current active transportation efforts, help reduce vehicle miles traveled, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, encourage transit-oriented developments for much-needed housing, promote economic development opportunities, including access to jobs and service for our underserved rural community and region. This is also a project that is part of the state's rails plan, has great support locally, has support within our regional agencies such as the Transportation Agency for Monterey County, the Monterey Bay Air Resource District, Monterey Salinas Transit, the premier military training base in our region, Fort Hunter Liggett, the San Luis Obispo Council of Governments, and the Coast Rail Coordinating Council, as well as the Monterey County Board of Supervisors, our state representative, Senator Caballero and Assemblymember Rivas, and our federal representative, Congressman Panetta. All of us have been working in collaborative effort as a team to increase access and get much needed PTC improvements along the Central Coast Corridor. This is a project that will actually fund and construct the accelerated access platform to get people riding rail quicker. And we really encourage the CTC to support this. It is an underserved region. This community and South County region has typically been, it is a disadvantaged community, a disadvantaged region. We're mostly farm workers. Our average demographics is about 87% Hispanic. And these dollars and these improvements really will go a long way to meeting so many of our goals and bringing that equity of investment that is so needed. I'm always available to answer any questions that you may have now or later. And I thank you again for this opportunity. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Teresa, next speaker, or Justin?
Yes, up next we have Jan Harnick.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners, for the opportunity to comment. My name is Jan Harnick, Chair of the Riverside County Transportation Commission, Mayor Pro Tem of the City of Palm Desert, and First Vice President of SCAG. On behalf of RCTC, I would like to express my appreciation to Caltrans for their partnership on the Coachella Valley Rail project. As you heard, and you may have noted from the presentation, this project is truly transformative, traversing and serving 4 counties. On a typical day, about 160,000 people travel through the San Gorgonio Pass from the greater Los Angeles area to the Coachella Valley, primarily on Interstate 10 and by automobile, because there's simply no other mode of transportation available. For decades, the prospect of a passenger train from the Coachella Valley that could travel to LA Union Station was just a dream. But with the state's partnership in securing the first major grant from the Federal Rail Administration, we were able to develop that dream into a project and begin the first phase of the environmental process. As Mayor Pro Tem of Palm Desert, I want to convey what this project means to my community in the Coachella Valley. While many associate the Coachella Valley with festivals and resorts and wealth, it's important to recognize the Coachella Valley and Eastern Riverside County are very economically diverse regions, with about 1/3 of our residents living in poverty. The pandemic has shown us our region, the connection is critical for our health, economy, our well-being, particularly for those who are most vulnerable. Through this project, those voices are being heard. The public input and engagement on this project speaks volumes to the level of support and excitement this project brings from various community-based organizations, private businesses, and individuals who are eager for a safe, reliable, and more sustainable mode of travel. Just to give you an idea, during the draft EIS public comment period, over 500 separate comments were received, 88% of which came from individuals and non-governmental organizations, and 80% indicating their support. Riverside County is the fastest growing county in California. By offering a passenger train, we can make better planning and infrastructure decisions and avoid the traffic congestion we see throughout Southern California and all the ongoing costs and problems associated with it. This is an exciting time for us in Riverside County, and we need the state's continued commitment for this project. To match the $10 million interregional TIP share, RCTC has also committed $15.7 million from its regional tip share. The project is a vital link in the Interregional Transportation Strategic Plan and State Rail Plan, and we urge the CTC to look favorably at the Coachella Valley Rail Project and approve the ITIP. We have bold plans and solutions for today and tomorrow. Please join us and support us in our efforts. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Justin, next speaker.
Next up, we have Ben Benoit. Ben Benoit, you're now muted and free to make your comment.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair Norton, for the opportunity to say a few words this morning. My name is Ben Benoit. I'm the immediate past chair of the Riverside County Transportation Commission, the current chair of the South Coast AQMD Management District, and a council member for the city of Wildomar. I'd like to take a moment to thank Caltrans staff for their support and partnership on the Coachella Valley Rail Project. Caltrans was instrumental in securing federal rail administration funding to jumpstart the environmental analysis, and without their support, we will not have made the progress that we've already made today. As you heard from my colleague Jen Harnick, the public support and the engagement on this project has been phenomenal. Not only has this project been truly unifying for Riverside County, but also the direct connectivity it offers to the rest of Southern California as travelers as far west as Los Angeles. They are just as excited to see an affordable and reasonable alternative to coming to the Coachella Valley without their car. This project is a turning point, and I'd like to highlight the main reasons for why the funding is needed. First, though, I'd like to also talk about the current corridors that currently serve as far as transportation and alternatives to a personal automobile. This change has not changed over the last 25 years. For as long as I can remember as a child growing up in the Coachella Valley, seeing the Amtrak Sunset Limited rail line going through the Coachella Valley only meant that it was likely late, because this train only arrives in the middle of the night in the city of Palm Springs. I also experienced firsthand that growing up in Coachella Valley, when my father decided he wanted to give me an experience of going to LA without a car in 1994. But first we had to get in our car and drive to the city of Riverside so we could then get on the new Metrolink line for our trip into LA without a car. This experience is still the same today for those families in the Coachella Valley. They still have to drive a car into Riverside just so they can get to LA on a train. I'd also like to talk about the travel demand, especially the highway volumes going through the I-10 corridor out to the Coachella Valley. These have only increased over the last 2 decades and will continue to increase until 2040, which this area with Banning and Beaumont and Cal Mesa projected to double in population. The I-10 is the only roadway that serves the Sangre Pass and connects the LA Basin with the Coachella Valley, and is a major artery for freight and passenger travel together. Without this project, existing air quality compared to the future air quality without this project will only get worse, and it was intended because of increased residential development and density. So I'd like to ask that we continue to ask the Commission to consider these needs and benefits this project will offer the inland community and approve the ITIP and STIP. RCTC, along with its numerous local partners, are fully committed to continue to work with Caltrans to bring the intercity rail service to Coachella Valley. Thank you again for this consideration.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next speaker.
Up next, we have Patricia Chen.
Thank you, Patricia.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, Chair Norton and commissioners. I am Patricia Chen with LA Metro, and wanted to express that LA Metro strongly supports the use of ITIP funds for all modes of transportation, and we're pleased to hear that the recommendation includes over half devoted to non-single occupant vehicle modes. I do have a few other things I'd like to share regarding the eligibility. The adopted 22 STIP guidelines clearly state that ITIP funds may be used for bicycle and pedestrian facilities. And as you are aware, the STIP is composed of two parts, the RIP and the ITIP. And the ITIP in turn also has two parts. And we believe that part A, subject to the 60-40 north-south split, but otherwise able to be used anywhere in the state, is a good place to fund active transportation. And we understand that it may be used on certain modes, but is not required to do so. About the CAPTI, there is a critical need to support a wide variety of project types to meet the new state goals and bring equity and climate protection to the state transportation system. There have been executive orders, a nationwide social awakening, and now a climate action plan for transportation investments, directing us to make investments that bring about equity and protect the climate. In addition, the California Active Transportation Plan shares common goals such as mobility, climate equity, and safety with the ITSP, and the ITIP is an opportunity to help implement those plans. Regarding the evaluation criteria, as it currently stands, the existing ITIP scoring criteria does not offer a very smooth way, shall we say, for the active transportation projects to compete well for funding. And LA Metro submitted a letter recommending expanding the project evaluation criteria to ensure that projects of all modes which facilitate interregional transportation by either supporting the interregional highway routes or connecting to the intercity rail corridors can compete effectively. And we're really happy to see that there are a couple of active transportation projects recommended. So that's good. However, I think for future STIPs, it would be great if we could work some more on the evaluation criteria. I do want to talk specifically about the Los Angeles River. LA Metro recently worked together with the City of Los Angeles to submit Segment 8 of the Los Angeles River Bike Path Project from Whitsett Avenue to Lankershim Boulevard in the San Fernando Valley. And we submitted this to Caltrans for consideration for the 2022 ITIP. This project fills in a major 3.2-mile gap in LA's multimodal transportation system, providing key connections to existing and future bicycle and pedestrian facilities, current and planned transit routes, and two major interregional highway routes, the 101 and the I-5, and potentially relieving traffic on those corridors. And also, it provides and enhances first last mile access by connecting residents to the Burbank Airport Pacific Surfliner station. And when complete, it will also connect to the Chatsworth station and the downtown Los Angeles Union Station. Additionally, I want to highlight that the $15 million request would leverage $23 million of local funding for a $38 million project. Just to wrap it up, so I just want to say it's critical that our state transportation dollars fund projects that promote projects that serve the communities that need them most. The LA River Bike Path will do that. It will serve many low-income and disadvantaged communities located along and near the 51-mile corridor by providing low-cost mobility and safety. These types of meaningful transportation improvements will help us meet greenhouse gas reduction goals and create livable, sustainable communities by supporting with the interregional transportation system with alternative modal options. Thank you so much for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you very much. And you raised some comments about the criteria, and I believe we'll be able, Teresa, to talk about some of these comments that were raised after the public comment period is done, or do you want to do that in process of these public comments?
I'd be happy to go either way.
This is a question for Vanessa, so, and Mitch.
Well, I would say by and large, the comments are for Caltrans to
Okay.
address, not the commission. We will be going over a variety of issues, some of which Teresa had raised, and we'll be sending a letter to Caltrans with those issues. But I don't think they're mostly for Caltrans to respond to if they can.
That's correct. I was asking Teresa where in the order of the agenda, not for her to respond, but where in the order of the agenda should we get responses from Caltrans? So Teresa, where would you like that to be as part of each request and comment, or at the end?
I think this is for Caltrans to respond in their final ITIP that is due to us by December 15th. So how it works is that Caltrans will take all their comments that I have received, and they will have to reconcile their proposal with the comments and respond to those comments. And in the final ITIP, it has to be documented, the response.
Great. So
at this point, Caltrans does not really need to respond. They just need to document it to make sure that in the final they respond there.
Thank you.
Thank
you. So for the public to understand, we're receiving input and we'll respond through the process and not in this meeting today. That's
correct.
What I want.
Correct.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much. And I will send a copy of the comments to CTC staff. I really appreciate this. Thank you so much.
And Caltrans staff, thank you so much. And thank you, Justin. Can we go to the next public comment, please?
Yes. Up next, we have Chris Lopez.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm sorry, good morning, everybody. I'm Chris Lopez. I'm a county supervisor here in Monterey County. I represent Southern Monterey County. Most of you probably know us as the salad bowl of the world. You know, back when John Steinbeck was growing up, King City was actually a big part of his childhood. In fact, his father and grandfather helped run the train station in King City. My grandmother actually owns the old home that his grandparents owned in town. And when we look back, you know, it's really interesting to read about John Steinbeck's perception of the small town of King City. He talked about it someday becoming a rival for San Francisco because of the railway that ran through town and the vibrancy and the agricultural community that was such a massive portion of the economy back in that time frame. So obviously we look at King City now as a small town that never saw those dreams realized. But in this grant process, in this request, there is an opportunity for that $7.5 million to be invested in King City to help bring some of those dreams to reality. For a small agricultural community, which happens to be the hometown that I grew up in, we look at these dollars as a way to revive an economy, revive a region that really needs an investment. And so we want to encourage you to make this investment, to make this partnership with us. As the mayor spoke about earlier, Mayor LaBarre from King City, we've got a great partnership from our federal, state, local, and even just community on this project. And this investment of $7.5 million is going to allow us to make sure that a lot of the future planning that we've put together for our region's economy comes to fruition, including supporting our local military presence, which is Fort Hunter Liggett, which is one of the premier training bases in the United States due to the lack of light pollution. It is actually an old Hearst hacienda, in fact. I really love history, if you can't tell. I want to thank you for the opportunity and ask that you give all consideration to approving the recommendation made by staff to fund the $7.5 million for the accelerated platform in King City. I appreciate your time and the work that you put in, and look forward to partnering with you in the future to make this dream a reality. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, we have Christina Watson. Christina, you're free to unmute yourself.
I'm sorry, am I still muted?
No, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. This is Christina Watson, Director of Planning at the Transportation Agency for Monterey County. And I just want to speak in support of the King City and positive train control allocation. And I think Supervisor Lopez and Mayor Labar said it better than I could, but the Transportation Agency for Monterey County is in support of this allocation. Thank you very much.
Up next, we have Kiana Valentine.
Good morning. This is Kiana Valentine on behalf of the Coachella Valley Association of Governments. And in keeping with the request to only add new information, let me align my comments with the previous speakers representing RCTC and Riverside County broadly in strong support of the $10 million for the transformative Coachella Valley Rail project in the ITIP. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I see no other attendees with their hand raised at this time. We do have one written comment that has come in, and I do see people attempting to raise their hand at this time. But the written comment reads, this comes from Cynthia Baruch. She writes, what is the deadline to submit comments? Naval Air Station Lemoore will be submitting a comment letter. Thank you.
And Justin, can you for the public, remind people what the deadline is to submit comments?
May I ask that James Anderson is maybe looking to answer that question?
Absolutely, Chair Norton and Commissioners. The deadline to provide public comments to Caltrans is November the 15th, 1 week from today. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. And I want to thank Kiana Valentine for her testimony. My mic was muted, so I did thank her, but no one could hear it. Thank you, Justin. Can you introduce the next speaker?
Chair Norton, at this time, I see no other attendees indicating they wish to make public comment.
Okay. Teresa?
Madam Chair, earlier you asked about the letters of support. The Commission has received a number of letters of support, a total of 13 that I have forwarded to all the commissioners. And I will also provide a copy of these letters to Caltrans so that they know the projects that we are being notified of. So so I think with that concludes all my comments, and I look forward to working with Caltrans and providing additional comments to Caltrans on our concerns and questions on the draft ITIP. If the Commission has additional questions that you would like for us to include in our formal letter that we provide Caltrans, please let us know, and we will incorporate additional whatever your desire is.
Thank you so much. Because we had other commissioners come on in the middle of this hearing, I want to give our commissioners another chance to speak. So Commissioner Inman.
Couple of things. So we heard, or we saw in many of the comment letters that we received, concerns about resiliency. So I guess my question of Caltrans, it's my understanding that each of our districts has done a resiliency planning effort to really look at resiliency and in particular, not only climate, but our wildfire impacts. So just a question on how does that information get factored into the interregional work? And then also a question on the cost overruns, because given the hiccups in the supply chain, we're seeing dramatic price increases on just about everything. So wondering what we will do just to be aware of that and what our plan, because it seems like our early years were pretty tight. So just want to give some thought to that. And then finally, just bringing up our meeting last week with our partner agencies, Air Resources Board and the Housing HCD. You know, we spent our whole day really looking at the integration and the intersection between housing and transportation. So how do we pull in those discussions, in particular about, I think, the jobs housing balance? Commissioner Alvarado reminds us often that we drive till we qualify. That came from our former Commissioner Gilmetti, but I think it is still the reality of many of our communities. So I guess my big question is, how do we knit all of these various efforts together? I don't, that's it. Thank you.
That's great. We will make sure we note that. Mr. Anderson, do you want to speak to that?
No, I just want to thank Commissioner Inman for the questions. I just want to let her know that we will take those very good questions under consideration, and we'll speak to them in the final 2022 ITIP. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Davis, I'd like to recognize you.
Good morning, Chair Norton. I hope you're having a good morning. This has been very interesting. I'm not really sure if the comment's at the appropriate place or not, but as we sort of see a lot of reports that talk about the return to transit going to be a slow grind, maybe up to the next 10 years. And we're making these needed investments to make sure that we've got a world-class system. Is there a way, or who is it that has been able to put people's butts in the seats and have them use these systems? And what are we doing to try to make sure that the various agencies are doing a really good job of analyzing best practices? Who's been successful? How are they doing it? So that we can put people on trains and reduce congestion. So I don't. There's a question in there somewhere, but you know, it's one of those things where I'm glad we're spending the money. It's the appropriate thing to do, but want to try to make sure that, like a lot of the trains I see when I'm on the freeways in LA or in the Bay Area or in the Sacramento metro area, and the train goes by and you see, you know, 4 people sitting in 5 cars. And so that I don't know who the question goes for, but that's just sort of something that's on my mind, and I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other commissioners wish to speak? Mr. Anderson, for my part, I would like to register a few comments, and that is that I'd like to see, as you've been moving forward with the look at how we have a full network of improvements, how are we going to achieve some multimodal network support? And that is that as we're looking at what we were talking about just now with putting people into transit, how are we also making sure that we are creating a system that gets people to those transit networks and has good linkages? Where are the places where those linkages need to be made? How can we invest in them as we want to move forward so that we're making sure that our systems are interconnected? And in addition, how can we look at now the recently signed infrastructure bill with a number of the projects and programs that we went to speak to our congressional leaders about, such as improving our access with the Trade Corridor Enhancement Program funds so that we could invest in new lanes for zero emission trucks and charging along these corridors? How can we make sure that we are taking our best look at leveraging our state resources with the new federal resources so that we could do more with the funds that we have and achieve the goals that now we see reiterated from California's national leadership now into a federal mandate?
Chair Norton, thank you. Those are very broad, sweeping, and great questions. So I'm going to take these questions back to our team, and we will work tirelessly to get you some answers and speak to these in the final ITIP. But thank you very much for the very well thought out and very extensive questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. Teresa, with that, is there anything?
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
I believe Commissioner Falcone has a question.
Oh, I did not see that. Commissioner Falcone, I was hoping you'd turn on your video, but happy to recognize you right now. Commissioner Falcone.
Hi, thanks so much, Madam Chair. You actually asked the question for me, so thank you. It was actually on alternative fuels and EV infrastructure. we can't forget our freight. It's a hugely important part of our economy. And I appreciate Commissioner Inman's point about, how we kind of think about weaving the housing and the jobs. We've talked about, jobs, housing balance in our regional planning, and, how are we doing this thoughtfully so that we don't create, additional vulnerable communities that, that will be impacted by our transportation decisions. So I appreciate everyone's comments and the public for coming and just hearing your question, Chair. You took it from me. So thanks for asking that question. It's one that's I'm particularly interested in. So appreciate this very much. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Falcone. Really appreciate your first ITIP hearing participation.
I agree. With that, I really don't have anything else. I do have a quick comment in regards to Commissioner Davis's question in regards to ridership. Just so you know, the department, Caltrans, does report quarterly the intercity rail, and it talks about ridership. And so next time at the next commission meeting, if it's the pleasure of the chair, we can take it off the information calendar, so Caltrans has an opportunity to report on the ridership, the fare recovery ratio, the on-time performance. And I think that would be a perfect opportunity for Commissioner Davis to ask the questions on the ridership. How are we getting these riders back on the train? That would be my recommendation. I just wanted to make sure Commissioner Davis didn't think we ignored his his comment and question in between. Sounds good?
Thank you, Teresa. I think that's a wonderful idea to make sure that we're looping these into our meetings in December and January. Thank you so much. I think this is a great way of making sure that we're continuing this in the threads and expanding the audience to understand that these are our priorities. So really appreciate it.
And I'd like to thank you, Chair Norton, and all the commissioners for your interest in the interregional program and your participation and involvement and your wonderful questions. I think they're important, and I think it just puts how do I put it? Keeps us on our toes. That it is an important program, and Caltrans is making themselves now aware of that. So thank you for your participation, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. So does this conclude the hearing today?
Madam Chair, we did just get one written comment. If we could take a moment to make that.
Of course.
Thank you. This is Karen Jernigan from King City. I want to speak in support of the King City Platform and Multimodal Station Phase 1 project. King City Mayor Labar and Supervisor Chris Lopez explained why having Amtrak stop here would benefit our farm workers and elderly community who have limited means of getting to the nearest larger cities of Paso Robles and Salinas, both 50 miles away. Our city staff and leaders have been working for over a decade to advocate for Amtrak stopping here. I hope you will support this request. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And I want to thank all of the people who came to testify today and took the time to write letters. It was especially intriguing to hear about the focus on equity and the ways in which you are also looking at moving towards sustainability and multimodal and accessibility. Your comments were very thoughtful and very well considered. And I want to thank you for the ways in which we are all learning from each other and adding to the conversation about how we can achieve multiple goals with the investments that we have, because doing so much with the dollars that we have is really the highlight of how we make sure that we have the right system for everyone. With that, I believe we will end the public hearing. Is that correct, Douglas?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay. Well, at 10:16, we are adjourned. Thank you for your time.